Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be able to talk to you about the latest technology advancements which can help international commercial claims recovery and debt recovery. I'm Peter Stransky, CEO and founder of ICBA, where we're building and operating dispute recovery platform. Now, let me start with some statistics. So, in US, litigation costs for small and medium businesses are more than 100 billion every year. And business impact in UK for the small and medium businesses is more than 40 billion every year in the UK. Only those two countries, almost 150 billion lost every year. And that doesn't count unmeasurable time lost and distraction for the companies. Now, not small part of it is related to international trade. Now, that's why it's important to be able to use the technology which is advancing every day for being able to better resolve the disputes or prevent them. So what are we talking about when we're talking about legal issues in international trade? Typically breach of contracts, the disputes about the contract terms and validity of the contracts, transit-related disputes, payments, of course, warranties, conformity of goods, IPR disputes, and on the practical side of things, what is the applicable law? Do I understand the legal process I have to go through? And do I have access to the right legal assistance? What will be the costs, liabilities? What is the enforceability? What is the eligible court? And how I can communicate with the counterparty? A number of additional issues which we might be facing. So traditionally, we trying to address all those issues by using domestic law and courts in our contracts, or use of arbitration clauses, which is definitely on the rise and sometimes for good reasons, sometimes not actually as helpful. Using small claims courts, which are the mechanisms available in certain countries. Added security for the payments of various kinds, and using specialized lawyers, which we have access to, or in-house counsels to make sure we can address those issues either upfront or in timely manner. Now, there are several statistics showing that commercial disputes are actually a barrier to international trade. So not only export-import duties and exchange rates fluctuations, but also the fact that the disputes are having unknown cost, uncertain outcome, and it's a stress and destruction for the companies and potential liability. So how technologies can help? Now, if you look at the technologies in the international trade related to commercial claims and disputes or potential disputes, we can look into four or separate them into four key areas, which is transactional industry solutions, preventative applications, actual dispute resolution and tools for the dispute resolutions, and the infrastructure solutions. Now, when I mention technologies, what I'm exactly talking about. So database integrations and cloud technologies and online access. Yes, that's how early it is for technology to be applied in the legal space related to the international trade. And the ability to transact and approach information online is, of course, driving down the cost and makes it easier. It's bringing some additional potential issues, which is either related to cybersecurity or to validity of the contracts. Now, you definitely heard about blockchain and distributed ledger technology. And many applications which are related to the claims and international trade are using distributed ledger technologies and blockchain in supply chain management, contract management, payments, and other areas. And it's clear that the blockchain is one of the areas, one of the technologies which will be available in a number of solutions as their implicit part because of its attributes. And therefore will be more absorbed as a technology rather than standing out as a separate or isolated technology. Now, Blockchain also allows something called smart contracts, but before going there, e-signatures is actually interesting technology, which is making strides into the mainstream and becoming quite a norm in a number of industries for good reasons, because driving down the cost of transacting. With no surprise, COVID was quite instrumental into the acceptance of e-signatures because of not having the ability to do the wet signatures, which were in some industries still quite traditional. And this will evolve into the smart contract. So that means the algorithms which will be defined at the time of the agreement and making based upon the conditions, automatic transactions as prevention against potential contract breaches or non-performance in certain areas. And those smart contracts are built on top of the blockchains, or are effectively part of the blockchains, either mainstream or public ones like Ethereum, or private ones or specialized ones for certain type of the industries, which is, for example, in several type of the supply chain solutions, which can use custodial. So that means the solutions where there's a third party which is responsible for managing the information and relationships, or non-custodial solutions where there's no third party. It's purely based upon two parties using smart contracts and therefore transacting in between each other. And with no surprise, AI machine learning, which I would say similarly as a blockchain, is becoming part of a number of solutions and like an invisible part. So anywhere where there is a need to deal with a large amount of the data and make sense out of those data, which is including e-discoveries, counterparty scorings, contract analysis, where there's a number of applications in using AI and machine learning, being able to predict also the outcomes of disputes based upon looking into the documents. And we will see definitely more of that going forward. So now let me move into the areas where those technologies are being applied and what services are available. And in each area, I'm using some examples, which are just a snapshot of the potential solutions. There's a number of solutions in each area for the specific use or specific situations. So transactional or industry solutions are effectively applying technology in order to create a closed-end loop for certain type of the transactions or in certain type of the industries or certain type of the use cases. As an example, VeloTrade, which is the invoicing and factoring platform for trading in Asia, with underlying ability to score the vendors as well as clients, and provide therefore a safe way how to get the access to a credit and being able to therefore trade at the better terms and prevent the commercial dispute in this case. Snapdragon, which is the solution to protect your goods against the counterfeit, specifically online sale of the counterfeit goods using your registered IP. And therefore, it is both preventing the potential dispute or rather loss, as well as being able to identify that that's something what's going on, so you can take the necessary actions against the infringing party. Or another example, ShieldPay, which is specifically addressing the professional services, being able to make the transactions, so it means providing all the services, the payments, the bills of the provided services automated, and therefore take away any potential disputes or make the disputes easily to be resolved. Now, more general preventative solutions, which allows to make the steps prior or when you're entering into the contracts, or which are specifically related to IPR in order to be able to position yourself better for the potential dispute or preventing the dispute because of the quality of the contract, for example. So it's a wide range of contract drafting in a number of jurisdictions, where what is the big advantage is that you don't need a lawyer to have the latest type of the contract for your specific type of the transaction, which will be adhering to the latest updates in the law, but also will be specific for the jurisdiction which is applicable or which you want to use for that specific trade or contract. Then the example is Legal, LegalZoom, and a number of others. The patent applications or patent search and then the consequent application, where the example is KISS patent, where you can do it online for the fixed price using certain technologies in order to be able to simplify the entire process for yourself, which is very useful. Or trademark research plus managing all your own trademarks and the applications using the platform called Trademark Now. As you can see, what is, and why I'm using those examples, what is the connecting dots here is that you don't use actually traditional legal services for that. The lawyers are kind of on the back end or are not needed because it's the services which are using the processes which are already implemented using technology. Now moving on to the actual dispute resolution. There's a number of dispute resolution platforms. So for online dispute resolution as such, which you don't see it here on the list, but it's definitely something what we will see more and more as alternative dispute resolution implementation. What also I'm not mentioning here are the technologies which I would consider kind of crude technologies, but they are pretty important, and they were changing in the last couple of years the way how you can approach the arbitration. So things like exchange of the documents or Zoom or other video conferencing software, which allows you to participate in the hearings without need to travel to the actual venue, which is of course driving down the cost and increasing the flexibility. And then also financing solutions. So companies like LexShare in US, which are allowing you when you enter the litigation to potentially find the financing if you need it for your dispute in patent, trademark area, or anything else. Anyone who does have experience with the US litigation knows that discovery, so that means research of the documents and collecting of the information, can be pretty costly. So one of the examples of the technology application, EveryLaw, which is driving down the cost, makes that entire process much easier for everyone involved. Or eJust, which is the marketplace to connect with the arbitrators for different jurisdictions, different type of the courts, AAA, London Court of Arbitration, and so on and so forth. Or another type of the solution, which is red points, making it easier to remove the counterfeits, which are infringing on your brand, as well as collecting the evidence for the actual litigation, which you might take on because someone is infringing on your brand or your trademark. And then the infrastructure solutions, which are, I mentioned already some of the e-signature, which are allowing to make the international trade transactions, contracts, and potential disputes easier to resolve or prevent them as such. So Wise, or TransferWise, as the company was known recently, as one of the examples for international transaction solutions with low fees and being able to transact fast. Then DocuSign, one of the prominent e-signature platforms, allowing also document management and effectively transact completely electronically, or Box for the document management, with securing the access to document, making the exchange of any document. So, for example, your trade secrets documentation that you're making, or the information about your goods when you're making a transaction with the international party, transparent and also secure. So, what to be ready for? What's coming, and what we as a companies involved in international trade should be making sure we don't miss, and we do internally. So there's a number of new solutions which you can start using. Now, what is important is to understand you also are under a certain level of pressure to adapt those solutions, because if the counterparty start using the e-signature platform, or the payment transactions in certain environment, or the exchange of the documents, you have to adapt. You have to be able to use those solutions as well, which also leads into implementation of the technologies within your own companies. So connect them to your internal processes to make it more seamless. Now, what is great news is that it's becoming cheaper and simpler because of APIs, because of so-called low-code, no-code development, so where you can set up your workflow connected to the external systems without need of external developers and costly and lengthy development process. It's also important to acknowledge that there is a need for training and education of your teams when using those new solutions. And that comes even down to such things like how to use the email, making sure that you protect yourself in the sense of against phishing. There is a lot of phishing attacks. So what's happening, all these solutions which are preventing or helping with commercial disputes, is also bringing the attention of the cybercrime, and your teams needs to know how to transact, how to use those solutions, how to protect themselves and your company, and adapt relatively quickly to new solutions. So there will be more solutions coming, even though it's of course important to mention that especially the part which is the actual dispute resolutions will be probably the last to implement technologies and become completely seamless. That is because dealing with the court systems and court processes which are relatively conservative, and therefore you on your end should be able to adapt to the new solutions quickly as they coming, and to be able to select the best ones, which means test and evaluate and see the recommendations for your particular industry. So now just quickly about dispute recovery platform, which is one of the solutions in the commercial disputes, especially for the commercial claims and litigations, both domestic and international, in US and UK, where we're bringing zero cost for the claimant, as well as hands-off approach, no need for the direct involvement, and completely risk-free approach. So evaluating the claims, providing the information about the situation of the claim, and taking over the resolution process if the claim allows to be done so. So thanks a lot for your attention. Hopefully some of these information shared were useful, and if there is any additional information you might want to get, you can see my contact. Please reach out and I will be happy to answer any questions you might have at this point. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much for that very informative presentation. We are now open for questions. While waiting for questions, if you want to connect more with Mr. Stransky, you can reach him directly. You can visit his virtual booth at the arena, or you can send him a direct message. Also, his contact details is shown on the screen.
And if I may add to the people participating in this session, do not hesitate to reach out on anything related to international commercial litigations, especially. And as I mentioned, we are active in UK, US, but also we understand some other jurisdictions, and we love to partner, and we like to help. So any questions or any inquiries, please reach out.
So I think all the questions are already answered during the presentation. Any final words before we end the session, sir?
Well, I would like to just thanks a lot, organizers, for having the opportunity to talk about the technology advancements in the field of international trade and commercial claims. And I believe that this part of the business, which a lot of companies are not necessarily excited about, will be becoming much smoother and effortless and cheaper because of the technology. So I wish all the participants not to need such technology, such a service, and also good luck at the event, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, sir, for being a speaker here at our Think Global conference. And thank you guys for joining this session. Have a great day.